All right, this is just an update on the Laguna. It's been about 13 days since they finally got back to me, and actually yesterday one of the parts arrived. Anyhow, about 2 weeks ago, after I spoke to them, they said they were shipping out the parts. I started to pull everything apart to be ready to put it back together when it came. So first thing that had to be pulled apart was this trunnion here, and basically that just mounts on there by 6 bolts. It really doesn't mount solid. There's kind of like jack screws in the middle of it and stuff that it balances on to level it and stuff. But that was really easy to take off. And there you can see those screws that hold it up in the air. So that machine surface on the bottom really doesn't look like it's required. But anyhow, so I took that apart, and then I taken the wheel off because they're sending a new wheel, and they told me this is the left-hand thread, so I took that off. But I turned it a little bit right-hand first because it was so loose. This thing actually was only on there about finger tight, this nut, and I'm going to get into that later. I think there's it seems like there's an issue there that somebody should deal with. But I took the nut off, and then I tried to pull that off, and I realized the brake was in the way, and actually it looked like everything was kind of off center down there too, but I could see how the brake actually wasn't even working in the right position there. So I basically couldn't get off, so I had to go around and loosen the bolts that hold the brake assembly in place, and you just loosen them up, and then I was able to slide that back out of the way. And then at the same time I had to loosen the motor bolts up and loosen the pulley up so I could pull it apart, and then just slip the pulley, and basically it's a matter of just pulling everything straight out, and it came right out of there pretty easy. And you can see how the brake really wasn't adjusted right, and on that shaft it kind of looked like right up there, if you look at the bottom of it, it looked like there might have been a little rubbing on that piece that's not machined back there, like something was off center and hitting it or something. But we'll get into that next. So anyhow, 12 days later this arrived after they said they were going to ship it. Came late last night, and it's a new trunnion. Actually, this is the same trunnion used on the 14-inch saw. I thought they would have beefed it up and done something a little heavier on the table for this, but turns out it's the same trunnion and the same I guess these aluminum parts and stuff. So first thing I decided to do was just to before I put everything on the machine and got it together, was to just try it on my table so I can put it together and see what happens. So it fit on there pretty good, and then I put the bolts on, and actually first I just took and I tried to make sure there were no gaps in any of the sides of it like there were before, and that was good. And then I put the bolts in it, and the nuts on it, those handles, and decided to just check it with an indicator to make sure everything was better than it was before. So I just flipped the table over and threw an indicator on it in the same positions that I had it before, where I was getting a real lot of movement in there, and decided to start cranking down on the knobs. And you can see I'm still getting it looked like about 1/1000th of twist in there when you tighten it down. So there still was a little tiny bit of twist in there. Something was still not quite right, but it was a hell of a lot better than it was before. So I took those aluminum trunnions off, and I looked at the where they're screwed to the bottom of the casting, and they were not machined flat. It's funny, they were just kind of all machined off a little bit and on an angle and stuff. So I took a nice flat piece of plywood and put sandpaper, some coarse sandpaper on it, and just ran it back and forth on them until you could see that it was hitting all of them evenly, so that I knew that they were basically flat and perfectly in line now. So I hit that a couple times, and then I went back and put those trunnions on, and here you can see how they put big oversized holes in. They mounted them with these little thin washers to kind of hold them, and the washers actually were all bent and twisted from when they assembled it. They could have at least put a little bit heavier duty washer on there that would have stayed flat and held everything tighter, I think. But you can see every one of them was twisted. And then I went back, put the indicator on it again, and now I'm within less than a 1/1000th in there, so that looks really good. And it's not bolted down or anything yet, so decided it's time to throw it on the machine. So I took the set screws out of the old table, and these are the ones that actually balance it and level it. So I'm just going to put them in here and start them all. When I took the other one apart, the one side of it was the screw was actually set to be about, I think it was about 49 thousandths, extending past the machine surface on the casting there. So I started all these set screws in first, and then I just took this thing and I flipped it over and took a caliper and figured I'd start with that first adjustment. Set it back to the 49 thousandths, and hopefully I'll be somewhere in the ballpark, but I'm still going to have to go through setting the whole machine up again, it looks like, because everything just flops and moves around so much. I guess to make, to allow for twisted frame or something like that, they put adjustment and everything, which is not really adjustment, it's just you keep sliding it around, it looks like. So I got that ready to go, and there you can see that new casting, all the rust in the holes here. I was amazed when I looked at it. There you can see how the light catches it and shows it to you. So they didn't do anything to protect these things from any kind of rust, as they came from Taiwan, I guess. And then the bolts go back in. There are 3 longer bolts that go in the front, and it looks like the 2 on closest to you right now had double washers on them for some reason, and that's the end that's actually jacked up in the air on the set screws to do the alignment or the squaring up of the table. And then there are 3 other bolts that are about a 1/4 inch shorter that go in the backside there. So there is a difference in the bolt length. You have to be careful to get them back right. And I just kind of got them. So, and there you can see how much play there is in this thing for moving it around and setting everything up. So I'm sure that's going to take quite a bit of fiddling to get that right. But I'm going to have the blade on and, be able to square to that and align to that. So I really can't do anything more now until the wheel comes. Now, if you're looking at the guides, you can see there's chunks taken out of them there, and it must have been from those bad welds on the Laguna blade, because that blade only was on there for about 15 minutes, and when I first put it on there, you could see the ripples in the weld, and you could actually hear the hear it hitting something. So I don't know how good these ceramic guides actually are. They sure don't seem like they're going to be durable after seeing that. And the Laguna blades don't seem to be, very well welded blade. So I decided to put the table back on and then go back and do the indicator test here. So I set the indicator up right at 0 there. And now with everything snugged down on the machine and stuff, I'm moving the knobs there, and you can see the indicator's like barely moving. And then here's the wheel. I took this all apart when I took it off the machine, and you could see that the brake was adjusted out by the edge, and that it actually wasn't concentric with the wheel either. And then here's the how the pulley goes on. If you look there, there's all this play in the pulley. It's just mounted by 3 screws with really big clearance holes on them, and they've got some flat heads, but I think that's why it looked like it was running off center when I got it, because it probably due to the motor starting or the braking or something, it could have shifted, I'm sure. And those bolts actually weren't that tight on it either. So if you look at the back side of this, you can see where they started to machine a pocket in. It's not all the way to a flat square pocket, but they did machine a ring in there that looks like it's for centering it. But the trouble is there's nothing to center it on. That's all flush right there on the wheel. So I have no idea how I'm going to get this thing back centered when I put the new wheel on or anything. Going to try to get a hold of their tech support again and see what they say, but it looks like they've got a big problem here where over time braking and turning that motor on actually can shift the location of this pulley, and it just doesn't seem right. And then if you actually look down in the bearings there, you can see that there's no spacer in between the bearings. And let's go back to the machine and look at this. Here's a loose running nut that holds that wheel on. And it's a left-handed thread, if you look at it. There's no locking provisions, no nothing on it. There's no Loctite or anything. And when you thread that on, you'll notice that, the wheel turns for the braking force. It's going to be that way. Then when it turns that way with the blade going down towards the table. And if you turn that nut that way, it actually loosens. So it kind of looks like, I've never seen a bearing set up like this before, where the nut actually is just kind of free running and has the ability to loosen. And there's no real way to properly preload the bearings or anything. There's no spacers or anything. So it sure looks to me like they did cut a lot of corners here. And I guess I probably wouldn't have bought this saw if I had seen something like this before. So, and there's the wheel is balanced. You can see it's got a lot of holes out of there. It's got 2-3 out of there. And then the other side there, I think that spoke right there is where that bump out was on it. So they did have to, they are balanced. I can tell you that much. So, basically that's what I'm up to. That's the point that I'm at. I can't do any alignment or anything until I get the good wheel on the bottom and figure out how to get everything centered and aligned and stuff. But in the meantime, I'm sure that you can see the concerns that I have here about how this machine is put together and what the long-term durability of it will be. And you can see it does have a lot of adjustment on it. So once I do get the blade back in, hopefully I'll do another video about setting it up and readjusting it. And I'm not quite sure about these bearings, how they that nut can preload them, but there's nothing to preload them against. So it seems like you could actually destroy the bearings. And I'm a little concerned about keeping everything concentric with the braking and the 3 horsepower motor starting. So hopefully Laguna will look at this and get back with me. So I'm hoping to get the other wheel and do a follow-up video, putting everything together and getting it lined up, and hopefully it'll be running right at least. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.